Welcome one, welcome all, and welcome to another episode with me, Kofi. Before we go ahead, I'll most definitely be speaking a lot about the film in depth, so spoiler alert, go and watch it right now if you haven't. I'll be going through my opinions on today's film of choice, Let the Right One In. Not the remake, no, the original, known as rätte, komma in its original tongue of Swedish, directed by Thomas Alfredson, the same guy who directed a very popular Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Let the Right One In is a bit of a twisted love story with dark undertones. I guess you could call it a romantic horror. We meet Oscar, a really reserved 12-year-old who's constantly bullied at school, but too worried to actually retaliate. He plays with knives and gathers newspaper clippings of murders and shit, so we gather he's not exactly in a great frame of mind, but we do feel sympathetic for him due to the ongoing bullying. He meets another young girl, Ellie. Really weird that she's just stood on this thing for no reason at 3 a.m. Anyway, she convinces Oscar to stick up for himself, and the next day on a school trip he finds a big stick and eventually uses it to bosh the fuck out of the bully's head. And you can see in his face how much he loved the feeling. Alongside this story, there's also an older man, Hakan, going around murdering innocent people, draining the blood and taking it back to his house. Again, spoiler alert, he goes back home and we find out that he lives with Ellie and is taking the blood back because she's a fucking vampire and he looks after her. Bit of an idiot really though, isn't he, because he gets caught and does the normal, completely sane thing of pouring acid over his own face as to not get recognised. Ellie then goes to the hospital that he was taken to and he offers himself to her as a sacrifice as she drains his blood. After this, Oscar and Ellie become really good friends and we see a kind of odd romance appear between a 12-year-old and a 150-odd-year-old vampire stuck in the body of a 12-year-old. When watching this film the first time, I thought that showing an image of a messed up 12-year-old's vagina was in pretty bad taste and was pretty disgusted at the director, but after doing a little bit of research on it, it's revealed in the book, and in the book alone, that Eli is actually a boy that was castrated as a child. You probably should have explained that better in the film, and no, Eli saying, "I'm not a girl," is definitely not enough. Now, the bully's bigger brother and a few other kids ambush Oscar in a pool and threaten to stab his fucking eye out unless he can hold his breath underwater for 3 minutes. It looks like Oscar's making pretty good headway, until Eli bursts in and dismembers all of them, bar one, and pulls Oscar from the water, leaving them to travel far away together. I was actually surprised that I enjoyed the film, to be honest. Unfortunately, the pacing of it was a lot slower than I felt it should have been. It was nearly 2 hours long, and it felt just a little bit too extended and slow in some parts. Besides that, I really did think it was fantastic. It felt like there was barely any music in the film, but it really did work very well. Instead of using music in the most part, I think they just made the sounds of the film slightly louder. The storyline was fantastic, keeping us unaware that it was a vampire movie while it being hinted at throughout, and the subtle use of CGI only when needed, for example in the scene where all of the cats attack Virginia, a woman who was turned by Ellie. This was a really good vampire movie that doesn't focus too much on the fact that there's a vampire in it. It focuses more on what happens around the vampire instead. The story will get a good 8 out of 10 for me, and once again I do suggest watching it. Honestly, don't be afraid of subtitles. Don't go and watch the remake first. Even though I haven't seen it, I would suggest going and watching the original film, especially since the person who wrote the novel also wrote the screenplay for the movie. The end of the movie did confuse me a bit, I'm not gonna lie, because Oscar and Ellie think that they're gonna go off together and be really happy, but no. Oscar's not gonna be happy at all. He's just gonna turn into Hakan, going out and killing people to feed Ellie, growing old and protecting her from the world, eventually leading to having to pour acid on his face so nobody can fucking track you back to your ageless, never dying vampire 12-year-old life partner. Anyway, that was me. This was that. I hope you enjoyed the review. Subscribe.